Good morning, everyone. It's Elise Leroux from Expello, and I'm very grateful for all of you joining us this morning. We have an exciting topic, letter of demands. Who would have thought that topic will make any of us super excited? I am going to have, please, there's the chats. If you guys have any questions, please drop it in the chats. That way we all can communicate and we can stay on the same page. This is not supposed to be, I don't want you guys to get lost. So please share with us if you have any questions. Aha, now I see people's faces again as well, and I don't feel lost. So let's jump into it. And we started it today. Today we are going to look at the purpose of a letter of demand, the type of letter of demand that you get. Yes, I'm not starting a new rule. I just want you guys to think about it a bit differently. Of course, I'm going to touch on important elements of a letter of demand, how to deliver a letter of demand, and the don'ts of a letter of demand. I think such a small letter has so much that goes around it. And it's almost like the foundation of any legal process. So for this reason, it is so important that we do it correctly. And because it can really prejudice all of your future steps taken. So let's get into it and we take it from there. So I think before we even get into the nitty-gritties of the letter of demand, the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, what is the purpose of a letter of demand? Now, I laughed when I saw this first picture of the little girl that's scaring you, because that's what many people use the letter of demand for. You know, it's to scare the tenant. The tenant should be frightened and not make this default again. That's the one step. The other one is threaten. Let's show them who's the boss. To intimidate, and that's what you get some of the letters of demand. And of course, the very I thought in arrogant lawyer. So that's the picture that I got. And so some people just want to quickly flex some muscles and say, I've got a lawyer. If you want to do this, we are going to do the legal route. All of that might be a bit true. We want to scare them a bit. It's to threaten. It's all of this, but that's not the real reason for the letter of demand. The letter of demand is there to start the breach process. Let's quickly take out the emotions. Let's take away the emotions, everything that's being taught. And remember, I'm a qualified attorney and I trained a lot of people. And a lot of my trainings went about, the letter of demand has to have such a much impact, all of those type of things. But I have to say, even since what I was teaching people when I was still in practice, and since being full-time in Expello, I've learned so much of what is helpful in the law fraternity, what is happening with agents, and what is the response from tenants, because that's also a very big factor that we have to take in consideration. So the first thing I think everybody just needs to know is the purpose of the letter of demand is to start the process. And I like the start one. It says to start the days to start running. Remember, if they didn't make payments on the first, because most lease agreements make provision that the rent must be in on the first of the month, or it should reflect, not just paid. It technically means the second day you can send the letter of demand. Most times I say to people, what I've seen in practice, the 5th of the month makes more sense. It gives, if the first was on a Sunday, it might not reflect on the 1st, it might only reflect on the 2nd. So give them a bit of time for the money to reflect into the account. But on the 5th, the letter of demand has to be sent. But it's to start the process. And why? Because that's what firstly the lease agreement stipulates. The lease agreement stipulates that when a tenant does not make payment, you have to send them a written notice to tell them to make payment, to remedy the breach. And I'm just going to take one step back. Most breaches are usually money related, but we are seeing a surge of body corporate rules being contravened. So that is also a real step. So remember, same thing. The moment somebody contravenes, especially if they do it a second time with the body corporate rules, send out that letter of demands that you can get the process started. That's what the lease agreement says. If you are not happy about something, if you feel the other party is breaching the agreement, give them a written notice. The other part is also, if it's a CPA lease, the CPA actually stipulates that in the event there's a material breach, you have to give the tenant written notice. So it's in the lease agreement and it's in legislation to say to you what you should do if somebody is in breach. So it's to start the process. Now, sorry, my nose. So now we're ready to start. I'm going to throw something in else. We do get different type of letter of demands. And I want to say to you, please don't run out and say, oh, the one that we've been using is wrong. Definitely not. It's just by choice. Different agencies know their clients, they know the clientele, they know how their processes flow, and you have to use the letter of demand which is best suited for you. For example, the first lady, the minimalistic one, is, for example, the TPN letter of demand. It's very straightforward. It's short, it's sweet, it's to the point. Now, in the past, people would have said, "Job, but that's not sufficient." It is. It has everything in there to start the process. So I almost want to say, if you want a generic letter of demand, that's the one to use, especially if it's a first breach. The second one is the attorney's one. Now, I know with many of the accounting systems, you have access to attorney's letters. Now, again, if that works for you, that is ideal for you. What we have seen is sometimes, especially with the first time breach, if the letter of demand goes in and it's too harsh, you do harm to the relationship with the tenants. Especially, I mean, say, for example, they really just in good faith forgotten. Or, you know, let's say good faith incident happened for the first time. If you go into harsh, as we all know, as South Africans, we are most probably, you're going to be more upset, you're going to be fighting, and we all have heard that. It's the first time I breached my agreement and you sent me a letter of demand. So that's something that happens. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying what's happening out there. And then, of course, the third one, I like the girl. She's the real summary, purple, her own style. We see a lot of agency that's taking a bit of both and adding it and sending it out. So really see, what is your brand? Well, how do you associate it with your brand? What works for you? And what is the best results that is given for them to pay, the best and for the health of the agents, all of that, and what is the best type of letter of demand for you to use. Now, that's the fluffy parts. I think that's the parts that nobody actually ever talk about the letter of demands, because we just take it off the process. But the things that we know and is super important is what should be in a letter of demand. I've seen letter of demands and legal processes collapse because this is not done correctly. And what do I mean? The first one, so obvious, the name of all tenants. How often do we have husband and wife on the lease? And everybody's so used to only speaking to one party. And then what happens? The letter of demand is only sent to one party. The effect of that is the other party, who is a party to the lease agreement, is not placed on terms. And you won't be able to cancel and proceed to evict. So it is super, super important to make sure that you, on the letter of demand, have all of the tenants. I even want to say and go as far, if you send a letter of demand, just go check your lease agreement again and make sure who are the parties. Because you can't just go on your invoicing, because maybe the parties have agreed, yes, that both the parties is tenants, but the invoice should be sent to the husband or to the wife. Then you take the details from the invoice and you only send the letter of demand to one party. That's going to have a detrimental effect. So first step, please make sure on the lease agreement who is all the tenants and that they are listed on the demand as the tenants. The second thing, the nominated address or email. Now, most of the lease agreements automatically appoints the property which they are renting as the nominated address. The part that I am still seeing popping up, especially if people's lease agreements aren't always updated, is that firstly, the lease agreement does not make provision for email. If your lease agreement does not make provision for email, you cannot send the invoices via email. You cannot send the letter of demand via email. So please make sure that the email address is placed in the lease agreement. Also, it doesn't help anyone if you don't put the tenant's email address in the lease agreement. Because a lot of people are saying to me, yeah, but at least then the landlord's going to contact the tenant directly, and we don't want that. If your tenant really wants to, they can get the details. They can just go to the property. It would then make sense if you rather just leave out the landlord's details, email address from the lease agreement, because then what's going to happen is then the tenant's not going to email them directly. But the lease agreement, because also, sorry, the agent, your details are in the lease agreement and you are acting as the agent for the landlord. But the tenant's email address has to be in there. The second thing that we often see is during the application process and the lease agreement, the tenants then insert an email address. And then somewhere to and fro, the email address gets updated. But there's never formal notice given, as is required in terms of the lease agreement, that the email address should be updated. So what then happens is that email address actually is not featured in the lease agreement and does not count as proper notice. So what do you do in those instances, especially if you know the email address in the lease agreement does not work? You will use the email address in the lease agreement and the new email address. Rather than too many email addresses, but always send it to the one that's also nominated in the email address. That is super, super important, because we need to know that you have complied with the lease agreement. Then in the body of the lease agreement, of the letter of demand, put the address. Make sure you put the correct address and the full address as per the lease agreement. Make it identifiable. It's just make it easy that we all know you're demanding with regards to which property. The second thing is confirm the tenant is in breach. You have breached the lease agreement. What is the breach? Tell them. Don't be fancy and say, you have breached the lease agreement. You are going to feel the consequences of the law. It feels like a terminated sentence. That terminator. Most people are too young on the system to know what is still terminated. But if you do, it would be fantastic if you at least can give me an emoji on that. But be clear. Say, you have not made payment of your September rent. You have not paid your utilities. You have contravened the body corporate rules by parking in a community area. Be clear on what is the breach. Then you have to tell them how to remedy it. Tell them, we need you to make payment of the full amount. We need you to stop parking on the community parking bay. And by when? I need you to do this within 20 business days. Remember, if it's a CPA lease agreement, stipulate within 20 business days that they are quite clear. Now, sometimes it's better to just say 20 business days from this date, because then later on you can do starting the counting. The good news is with Expelo clients is what we do is you send the letter of demand, and from our top of demands and our additional letters during the breach process, we will stipulate what is the date by when they should make payment. But for the initial time, the letter of demand, just to say that they have to pay within 20 days will suffice. And of course, what is going to be the consequences if they don't remedy? Please don't just say you'll feel the consequences of the law again, or I will take legal action. That doesn't say anything. 20 business days, I always say to them that the lease agreement will be cancelled. Face it, if somebody can't pay you and they can't remedy, you want the lease agreement to be cancelled so that you can enter into a lease agreement with a party who can keep you in the agreement. So cancellation should always be the first option. So I've got a bit of an example here. If we go to that page. Very nice and easy, just to say, dear tenant 1 and 2, per email, if you have the address, and make everything nice and clear. You will notice I do use bold because it stands out a bit, but there's not a lot of capital letters. Nee? No screaming, no shouting, short and sweet. You failed to pay payment of your rent and utilities for the rent and I doubled the rent, nee? So I couldn't even type properly. I will fix that before we share the slides with everyone. And then we say clearly, we are going to require you to make payment. If not, we're going to ask you, the lease agreement will be cancelled and we will be required to vacate immediately. It's very clear. I need to pay or I have to move. No surprise. Your letter of demand might change a bit if one goes to a consequential breach. Somebody that continuously paying late. I would rather start the letter than you have once again failed. Because already it sets the scene that this is not the first time that somebody has breached. Because if you take legal action, you must probably not going to attach all 20 previous letter of demands. So you want to attach one letter, but you already want to set the scene, almost like an acting movie. You're again going to say, you're currently, the amount is due and payable, and attach a statement. Just a tip on the statement. Remember, attach it from the date that it's become. Let it start at the 0, that you can see all the amounts. Don't attach a statement that starts with balance brought forward, because that is going to make it difficult. And especially remember that there should be no questions. Again, you add the amounts, but now I've added something different to this demand letter. And the big thing that I'm adding is to say attorneys may be instructed to issue summons against you to obtain judgment and attach and sell all your property. Now, remember that first picture? So I said sometimes you do a bit of things to threaten a bit, scare them a bit. It sort of motivates and tell them that you're a bit more serious now. And I think that works very nicely with the consequential breach. We have a couple of other clauses as well that can work very nicely.
Elise?
Yes.
Sorry, Elise. Just before you go on to the next slide, I see Petra asked, she has a question about the nominated address.
Okay. Zelda, for some odd reason, I cannot find my chats. Can you read the question for me?
Petra, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and then ask your question to Elise.
Thanks. Hi there. Sorry
Hello,
to.
Petra.
Hi. The nominated address, what we're finding is that people put the address that they're staying at currently, which they're going to be moving from. Should they be putting the new address of where they're moving to, the property address of what they're applying for on the lease agreement? Because they're moving from that property where they put the address. So you can't, if you serve them at that address, they've moved from there.
Absolutely, Petra. It would make no sense for them to have their current address. So remember, when they do the application form, they will complete their current address all of that. But when you do the lease agreement, and remember, also it would be ideal that you complete the lease agreement as much as possible. Don't just leave those basic things to the tenant. When they applied, they gave you the email address, they gave you all of the information. You can actually put it in. But one of the things definitely in the lease agreement, nominate the address where they are leasing, they're going to lease. So the new lease agreement's property, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Is there any other questions? I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on this morning, but for some odd reason, I lost my chat box. So I cannot see any of the chat. So please, if you're welcome to unmute, or Zelda will again just stop me like that. Just to go back to the additional clauses, one of the things sometimes I realize, and especially these days, is that people don't always understand the consequences. So I think one of the things what I would like to put in a lease agreement, especially if you are doing that forever, he's paying late, you demand, they're paying late, you demand, they're paying, you know, that whole dance that everybody does, is to say that the lease agreement will not be renewed and you'll be required to vacate at the end of the fixed term. People should realize that there's a consequences of this, because although you are not cancelling at this stage, you don't want them continuously staying in this, and you're already telling them that you are going to require them to vacate. There's sometimes, because especially if somebody's staying in a property which they really like, they would ideally rather than start paying on time to continue staying there. But that is definitely. Also, when you add that to your lease agreement, also start canvassing with your landlord and say, landlord, you are having these problems every month. Every month your blood pressure goes up, you are upset, I'm stressed out, you know, all of this. I suggest when it goes, can I start advertising? Can we find you a different tenant? That if you do that communication early on, it helps the landlord prepare for it. It tells the tenant that you have to start, you know, we're not going to renew. This is not going to substitute your formal notice in terms of the CPA, that not more than 80 days, not less than 40 days notice. It's not going to substitute it. It just continues giving them the notices. The other one that is quite an invitation, more or less, is kindly contact me urgently should you not be able to make payment in full before the due date. I think it's a bit of an invitation, especially maybe on the very first letter of demand. If it's the first breach, you say, communicate with me. Don't just go silent. I don't know. It feels that most people goes into ostrich mode. Oh, something went wrong. I'm not going to speak to the agent. I'm just going to go all quiet. And maybe they just leave me alone until I make payment. Invite them. Say to them, listen, if you have a problem, speak to me. Okay, you had unforeseen expenses this month. You went into arrears. Okay, how are we going to, is it something that you can solve? If they lost their jobs, it's not going to get better and you need to address it. Then the third one, and I hope ClearScore never hears me, and please, it's with all respect, but have you guys seen the advert, and does any of you understand it? If you look at the ClearScore, you see a guy in the middle of the ocean that's very frustrated, and clearly it's upsetting because it's difficult to get your credit report. But people don't understand what makes the difference if there's an impact on my credit bureau. So many times, and in the past, it usually said non-payment will be updated with the credit bureaus, and your credit score will be negatively impacted. People don't understand that. So what we've been seeing, the big difference is it will impact all your future rental applications. Now it's real. Now you can see that, oh, it's not just going to be an update and a credit report that is not going to worry me. It means that if I want to move to a new unit, they're going to go, I'm maybe not going to consider you because you're a bad payer. There can be no wonder. They can't be surprised if they apply again and somebody says, no, sorry, we see on TPN you've been paying late. What? I've been paying every month. But your late payment has a negative impact as well. So that is something just small that sometimes is added. Again, look at the type of tenants you are dealing with. We have different markets, different areas, different things work for different people. So please keep that in mind. Is there any questions with regards to the letter of demand, the clauses, the content, before I move on?
Elise, I received a question. I don't know if I may say the name. So it was directly sent to me. I'm just going to
Yeah.
ask you the question. So he asked, if it is a rental and a judgment is obtained, what assets will be attached of the tenant to recover outstanding amounts?
Definitely the TV, the microwave, all the things that they know don't need to live in. They don't always take the fridges because at least they have to have the basics to continue living. I want to almost say that if it reached that point, hopefully you have cancelled and proceeded with the eviction as well. Because if people just continue, remember every month, if you issue summons and the lease has not been cancelled, you can only issue summons for the amount demanded up until that date. So, for example, you've demanded for September's rent, you now issue summons. You can only issue summons for September because remember the lease agreement has not been cancelled. The rent for October is not due yet. Now, it means in October, you have to issue a new summons for October's rent. So that's the first thing. If the lease is cancelled, you can actually claim for the continuous loss of income as well. But the other thing is, remember, household goods don't always sell well. So rather focus on getting somebody out to minimize the loss as much as possible. That if you need to attach, because from the attachment, the sheriff still has to be paid, the advertising needs to be paid, and the auction fees. So please just keep that in mind. I hope I've answered that properly and in full. Okay. The good news is I found my chat. So that is what happens if you look for something else. Okay. So we looked at the letter of demand. We've looked at the type of the purpose of the letter of demand, the processes, and all of this. I do think letter of demands are quite easily found. TPN has got a good one. Like I said, your accounting systems usually have one. Expelo does not do the letter of demands because that is part of the managing agent's profile. That's what they do. And I'm going to tell you guys now where we get involved. And of course, it's with the method of delivery. So most people, I think most people use email these days. Everything is emailed. So again, please make sure the email address is in the lease agreement. Also, use an agent. Your nominated email address should be in there because you don't want the tenant to be sending you information and they're sending it to the wrong place. So make sure the email addresses are correctly in the lease agreement. I also want to say, if you're a Expelo client, remember this is how a breach is reported to us. Is the moment you send that letter of demand, you are going to CC breach@expelo.co.za. And one of my team members is going to drop that in the chat just now. So it's as easy as you sending a letter of demand and you CC breach@expelo.co.za. What's going to happen is, what we've seen is most tenants will make payment within a week. If they don't, it usually means there's a real problem that they need to solve. And that is when you will receive a communication from us to say, hello, it's been a week. Did you receive payment? If not, please supply us with the rental statement. So there's not going to be additional documentation or claim forms or any of that that needs to be completed. You just need to forward us, just to CC us and that breach. The other benefit is, part of our processes, we make sure that you send the correct letter of demand. We're still seeing a lot of people just sending a 7-day letter of demand. And yes, there are clients that have the lease agreements on a month-to-month basis. But if they're not on a month-to-month basis, please remember, you cannot cancel the lease agreement if you only send a 7-day letter of demand. Even if your lease agreement says that, remember your lease agreement can never supersede the legislation. I know a lot of lease agreements say that you're going to send a 7-day letter and then you can issue summons. But what I've seen in practice, very few landlords really have money to issue summons. They can actually start with one legal process. And again, to rather get a non-paying tenant out is going to be much beneficial to your landlord than just issuing summons and they continue to stay in the property. Luckily with Expella, those that don't know, we pay for the whole eviction. So that is why it's always important for us to make sure that the people proceed to get the tenant out. So you're really going to email, we will connect with you. Maybe you're going to say, well, we know this tenant and we're quite sure they're going to pay. So we will take the risk of waiting a week, thereafter sending a new 20-day letter of demand. But at least you know there's somebody just checking in and making sure everything is on par. Or we'll also put up our steps to make sure that all the parties are there, just to keep an eye on it. So, because we know how crazy things can go. Over and above, the landlords being on your case for payment, you have to process all of that, and it can become quite a bit. Then usually your lease agreements make provision for hand delivery, which is good. I mean, sometimes you need to knock on the door. Expella knows that. If somebody ignores our emails and ignores our messages and our telephone calls, I mean, we'll arrange for somebody to knock on the door. So that is definitely a way to deliver. But please don't make that your only way, because we all know how busy we are. And it's going to be terrible that you have to tell the landlord, sorry, I just didn't get to it because I have to drive in my car 30 minutes to go attach a letter. Also, I know technically what's going to happen is you're going to make an affidavit if you ever go to court to say, Elise Leroux went to the property on this and this date, I spoke to so-and-so person and I handed it to them. They don't need to take it. If they refuse to take the letter from you, you can purely make a note on your copy to say, I met with the tenant, they are refusing to take the letter, I have no witnesses, I'm putting it on the floor. Your best witness is then just to take a selfie. Take a video. We're all good at it. Show them how you're attaching it to the door, how you're putting it underneath. Take a photo of everybody and them refusing to take the letter. Because unfortunately, still a lot of tenants think if they pretend not to have received it, it doesn't come into effect. And that is not the case at all. So please keep that in mind when delivering the letters. And then the last one, registered post. I'm very tempted to say, everybody that's on here and you know where your emoji is, please raise your hand if you're still using registered post. I'm going to tell you why I'm asking this. My opinion is that we all know that post, who knows how well the post office works. And with registered post, there's a good chance that they might not get it. I know. You get your slip and the lease agreement says, in terms of it, will be deemed they have received it 4 days after this. But the purpose of the letter of demand is to start the process, and you want the tenant to get this. I remembered when I was in practice, ideally you send it by registered post because you hope they don't get it, so they can't fight it and they don't reply. But we're not lawyers now. We want them to reply. We want them to get the notice. So don't send it to them by way if you're not sure they're going to get it. Courts are accepting email. It's no longer a big issue. So it's not required that you have to send something by registered post. Don't take the option just to send it by normal post. Again, I think even if you're paying less for normal post, it's still a waste of money because we don't know if they're going to receive it. So if you're not going to do the registered post or the formal courier way, don't waste your money because you want them to get the letters. So email very valuable. You have proof that it's been sent. You can prove that to where you have sent it, the date, the time, and everything, which is absolutely amazing. So when you send your letter of demand, please, after you sent it, go to your sent box. You'll see, and you open it. It will show you everything that proves that you've emailed it. Keep a copy of that as well, because that's going to be your proof that you've emailed it. So that is the things that's super important. Now there's a new kid on the block that's sometimes a bit controversial. And I think I want to mention this before I go back to questions, and that is WhatsApp. Guys, firstly, I do think that things has changed. In your lease agreement, please start making provision for WhatsApp. Because one thing, if you haven't known this, I found that out, I was quite surprised, but your cell phone number isn't automatically your WhatsApp number. So don't assume, because it's never safe to assume, but never assume that the cell phone number is the WhatsApp number. Especially if your lease agreement is still making provision for a fax. I don't think anybody's using faxes anymore. I don't think even many people know how a fax machine works. So substitute the fax number for the WhatsApp number. That's the first thing. And I mean, I attach and send documents often on WhatsApp because it's convenient. People have their cell phones, they read it, and you can see with the blue 2 ticks it's been delivered. But I won't be as bold to say to make this your only one. Email your letter of demand if your lease agreement makes provision for it. Then WhatsApp it to your landlord or to the tenant, the letter of demand. And even if you want to, that's what we do, is we say, this has been emailed to you. Because then you have proof that you have emailed and WhatsApped it to them. And of course, take a screenshot that they've replied or that it's been delivered. It just strengthens your case that they should know about the matter. Because they're definitely going to open it. An email you might still ignore, but you're definitely going to have a look at the WhatsApp. Alreta refers to CamScan. Now, I'm definitely going to Google that. So if that works for you guys, is it just the app that you scan the letters, or is it almost like WhatsApp? Alreta, if you can unmute. We all share information. I can take a sip of my tea. Okay. We'll go Google that as well and see what it is. I've got a question. After how many months can you evict a tenant? 1 month skip payments? What is the legal answer? Tanya, it's very easy. The moment they default, you send your letter of demand. If they have not remedied, you can cancel and you can proceed with an eviction. The part that is important to know that an eviction is not like the credit bureau that you need to send to the NCA. I think you have to send 3 letters of demands before you can list them. That's not how an eviction works. Also, and I'll get to this just now regarding cancellation, but yes, the moment you send it, you say you can cancel, you can cancel. You don't have to give them too many notices. Oh, nice. So just as Alreta said, it's like an email on your phone, save in file for reference when sent to client. Alreta, we're definitely going to check it out, and then I'll share it with everyone. Thank you for sharing this. This is also an amazing part. I like an app, and if there's anything that we can help any rental agent to improve, I think everybody's going to be happy. Now, just something that I want to say, what should not be in a letter of demand. People, too many capital letters. If you get capital letters in an email, what are you reading? He is screaming at you. So please refrain from too many capital letters. Refrain from too many bold or underlining. It comes across threatening and you're putting emotions in this. I know it's emotional. I said to people, I couldn't understand it. I've done a lot of evictions and I argued and I stayed cool and calm. Even now, when we deal with tenants, usually I stay cool and calm. But when my own tenant defaulted, I don't know what went wrong. The emotions got high and I became like a ridiculous banshee woman wanting to scream at people getting my money. So remember, the owner has to get emotional and stuff. That's why you are there. You are there to take the emotions out of it and just do the standard processes. Don't threaten. Miriam asked, what about red text? Again, yes, I mean, like I put 20 days in bold. I put the amount in bold because we also know people are lazy. They don't want to read the whole thing. So they are going to read the bold things first. So if you have to pay 5,000 20 days, I mean, that's going to stand out. Again, on my cancellation notice maybe, or eviction, put that in red. But also again, depend on the first letter. From Expella's side, we like it if the first letter is minimalistic, because our process is built up. I mean, our letter, since your letter of demand, we send an additional 4 letters. That's why our clients love us, because we do all of that extra work. And our letters, you know, it sort of goes a bit higher and more intense. We start with, oh, you haven't paid, to it's becoming serious, and now, ooh, it's judgment time. So, but just be careful with it. No swearing. People, I've seen emails. Then at the end of the day, people are more fighting about, it's like watching 2 4-year-olds fighting. I'm not an idiot, you are an idiot. No, you are the idiot, I'm not the idiot. It's not about who's the idiot, it's about payment and when is it going to be made. So keep it clean. If you need to write that email, don't put an email in, go drink tea, drink wine, double brandy, whatever is your choice, come back and then send it. So please be careful with it. My most important advice I can say to you is, remember, you are writing that, yes, for the tenant, because you want the response. But at the end of the day, you want that letter to be used in court. So when that presiding officer gets that letter, they shouldn't think, wow, landlord or agent, this is a bit harsh. They should see, oh, this person was doing the process. It's the crazy tenant that is in the wrong. So don't default yourself by going too wild. Write it in a way that if anybody objective that doesn't know the facts, read this, still see you as the professional and as the innocent party. I hope that helps. I know we all wanted to send those, you know, that, and I can't even think of one except for laugh out loud, and one of those things, but don't. Save yourself. You are the professional. And then I think one thing that is super important to know, if your letter of demand is defective, you will not be able to cancel. Your cancellation, your eviction, all your steps from there on is going to be defective. So please make sure your letter of demand is proper. I almost want to say the good news for Expella clients is you guys never have to worry as to when you're going to cancel and whether the cancellation is done correctly, because we do that for you. But if you do it on your own, firstly, don't just proceed to cancel if you haven't had the discussion with your landlord. Because I see so many people just cancelling a lease agreement and then the landlords don't go to lawyers. Remember, the moment you cancel your lease agreement, you are no longer entitled to demand rental, because rental is in terms of a lease agreement which you have cancelled. So rent is no longer due. So yes, you can ask for damages, but most of your accounting systems doesn't make provision for damages. Remember, rental is charged upfront. Damages is at the end of the month. So if you start charging damages upfront, they can argue that clearly you still want rental. Also, what I'm seeing just overall, you have 2 parties in a unit. The one is on the lease agreement, the other is not. Now the party that's on the lease agreement leaves the unit and you have one person left behind. Be careful to start demanding rent from this party, because at most they can say that you've entered into a verbal agreement by demanding rent from the occupant in the lease, in the unit. So if you have somebody in the unit, your first thing would be, I see you have remained in the property. Are you going to vacate? In the event you want to stay, I need to do vetting to see if you qualify. Otherwise, you need to vacate. And who's going to be, you keep the original tenant still liable for the rent or the damages or everything, because that person gave the person that's currently in the property a right of occupation. So just be careful. I see everybody quickly jumps to demand rent from the occupant, while that can actually constitute as a new lease agreement. So please be careful for that. We've got a question. Who can legally send a letter of demand, or can a landlord do his own letter? Leonie, anyone can do the letter of demand. It's the process that starts within the lease agreement that stipulates if somebody is in breach, you have to take the approach. Remember, it's not a debt collector's process solely. It's not just about money. It's about there's a breach, and you have to inform the other party that you're in a breach, and you require them to remedy. Ideally, it's not good for landlords to do it, or if somebody that doesn't know the whole processes, to make sure that it's done correctly. If landlords are managing their own properties, then it's better to go to a lawyer to get it done, to make sure the process is done correctly. Or definitely, when you guys are doing the placement and they don't want you to manage it, maybe check in with them. Ask them, are you able to deal with these things? Because we're not going to do it for you. And because, I mean, that is why you guys have the amazing systems. I hope that makes sense. I want to say thank you to each and every one today. And of course, I always book a longer time, because sometimes we get a lot of questions and a lot of things. But the purpose is not to keep you busy. The purpose is to give you guys knowledge and share practical things that we see happening. So if you're not an Expelo client, please scan the QR code. That's behind me. I feel that. Wait. That's behind me, or on the screen. And one of my amazing team members will reach out to you, and we can tell you how we can offer and make your lives better. Also, there is my contact details. You're welcome to send me a WhatsApp. We will add you to our broadcast list, where we share all of our webinars, if there's any events, any of those type of things, that you can stay connected. Letter of demand is something that every rental agent should know about. But that breach process should never be the beginning and the end of your work. You need to be able to go out and get more work. So that's one of the benefits Expelo really can offer. Our team will handle the breach process. We give continuous feedback on every step we take. And all our feedback is updated on our free online portal, and it gets automatically emailed to the landlords. So everybody knows at all times what is going on, what is the current status, and what is the next step, in a language that everybody understands. Because we're not here to sound clever, we are here to give everybody to tell them what is the next step. And remember, Expelo's fee is only 250 Rand per month per lease agreement. I do think, especially going towards December, remember, you cannot apply for Expelo services if the tenant is already in default. You need to apply at the onset, or if the tenant has not breached in the past 3 months. So we still see a lot of agents or owners wanting to sign up with Expelo when they're already in breach. Unfortunately, we cannot accommodate those matters. So you're welcome to email us, and we will put you in touch with one of our amazing panel attorneys to assist you with that process. Thank you for your time. Is there any questions? Let's see. Everybody happy? Okay. Thank you everyone for your time. We're looking forward to connecting with everyone. Stay safe, and we'll share the link to the video and some of the things as well. And it's almost Christmas, and usually we'll come and say hello to as many clients as we can, but please keep safe. And also let us know if you want training for your office. We'll gladly help with that as well. Keep well, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Elise.